Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and Blizzard touts Shadowlands as an expansion that'll be very alt friendly. That means if you want to play a variety of classes and even specs, this expansion should be the perfect expansion for you. Battle for Azeroth, for a better word, was really bad with all its systems, all very complicated and convoluted. It was very difficult to maintain legitimate alts that you could actually play in Mythic Pluses, raids, or even PvP. And there's a variety of alt specs that I really want to play. Primarily specs because I find it a lot easier to play alts when you focus on one specific playstyle instead of trying to cover the whole class. That is something I'm definitely going to do for my main. But if you guys have been struggling to figure out what you want to play in Shadowlands, well, here's my list of some of the specs that I found interesting for one reason or another. And some of these specs I am definitely going to be trying to alt going forward into the Shadowlands. Starting off with the Shamans, of course, Enhancement is my pride and joy. Oh boy, cannot wait to start playing it because the playstyle that currently has in BFA, it is cool, Builder Spender, but I felt like too many specs became Builder and Spender. Build Calm Points, spend them. Build Fury, spend it. Build Rage, spend it. Build Maelstrom, spend it. So Enhancement is going to be a nice break to just be all about cooldowns, similar to Paladin minus the Builder and Spender. I'm also really excited about some of the combos that Enhancement will have with its talents, variety of different legendaries, certain conduits, and even Covenant abilities. I'm very interested to see what kind of variety of builds players might be able to come up with, and that means also a variety of builds for me to try, be it dungeons, raids, or PvP. The Maelstrom system is something I actually have been fairly familiar from older expansions, so it feels like meeting an old friend all over again. That combined together with the system of slamming your head on the keyboard against the Stormstrike button, married together into what I would describe as a very enjoyable, very engaging spec with, I feel like, a lot of potential. The next one on the list is going to be Frost Death Knight. I'd say Frost DK is very similar to that of Enhancement. It's even more face rolly. If you played older expansions, you will know the players that made fun of Death Knights back in the day saying they're so face roll and so easy. And part of it did, I guess, come from the two-hand playstyle. Well, that playstyle has always been my dirty pleasure, and it's coming back in the next expansion. I honestly couldn't care less about playing dual wield as Frost. I've always felt like the two-hand playstyle with a massive claymore, a warhammer, or an axe just fit the Frost playstyle much better to be more vicious rather than the playstyle we've had with two noodles on each arm. I felt like it always was the true way to play Frost DK. And since that is returning, that got me very excited to pick back up the Frost Death Knight that I used to love and remember. For Paladins, there are two specs that I have to spotlight. Retribution Paladin, I think, is a sore spot for some players, but to me that is still a spec that I have interest in. I guess it's just I haven't played Retribution Paladin for expansions, so I feel like with this spec there's still a lot for me to explore. The mad damage that Retribution is probably going to do with so many talents that increase the damage output, where the spec is already so heavy on burst DPS, is something that I'm actually looking forward to exploring. And then there's Holy Paladin, because, well, a melee Holy Pally DPS build might be possible. Heal your allies in Mythic Pluses, do some damage on the side. I think it's going to be really cool. But primarily for me, why Paladin is generally a class I'm interested in is not even as much from the specs, but rather what the specs share now, which makes it more closer to the Paladin class identity. Things like Devotion Aura and Hand of Sacrifice given to all three specs, even Retribution, so now you can feel like you're helping your allies and maybe even off-healing them. Maybe a potential Retribution Paladin Healer Mythic Pluses for certain builds. I think it could be very interesting in certain comps. And also you get some damage aspects for Holy as well, like the finishing power of a Hammer of the Righteous. I think it's going to be really cool to experience this class altogether, but Holy and Red are the two specs that I would be able to name. Then we get the Priest, and of course I have to try Shadow. Shadow looks so good in my eyes, and while the spec isn't perfect in every aspect, I really think it's a much better version of the BFA Shadow Priest. It seems that Blizzard really wanted to marry the whole Void, Form, and Shadow Priest dots with Devouring Plague put together, and for me, I'm fine with the Void still staying in some way, but not really being the primary aspect of the Priest, but rather a cooldown, which I can deal with that. But DP making a comeback, more interplay with your dots, a change to your mastery. I mean, it plays very similarly. You're still going to be spamming Mind Blast, but it's just a fresh new coat of paint on the same spec that I've played before, and all these changes that I actually enjoyed, all these playstyle changes that I actually really liked so far following in with Shadowlands beta, definitely want to check out some Shadow. Disc is another choice because, well, you could do damage while healing, and of course, that's something that I'm a huge fan of. Then we have Monk, and of course Windwalker by far is some of the best mastery I've ever seen. Its mastery, in my opinion, is the most fun playstyle of any other class's mastery. In terms of the whole, you can't repeat your rotation. You actually have to swap things around. It makes you kind of think on the spot. And of course it ends up eventually, for somebody who is an experienced Monk, very much a muscle memory. But for me, who hasn't really been playing a lot of Windwalker, that is still super exciting. Also, there are some changes like Zuan is going to be a primary button for cooldowns for being able to dish out damage. I'm actually excited because I think it's going to be better than Touch of Death, which is becoming an execute. Zuan can cleave, Touch of Death couldn't in BFA, so I think it's going to be very interesting and exciting. Hopefully the tuning is good for monks where they won't end up stacking versatility at the end of the expansion. And just like Holy Paladin, I am going to have to put Mistweaver in this list as well. I'm very interested in trying to make a melee Mistweaver healing build. I think it would be actually super fun to be like this hybrid-y, a bit of damage, a bit of healing type of spec, and I'm really hoping that certain playstyles for it do pan out by the time Shadowlands comes out. Then for Hunters, if I had to choose a spec, I know you guys are thinking Beast Mastery, gonna be the biggest beast cleave possible, super fun, super easy. How about the Marksman? The damage and the changes for it have been huge, but I am gonna have to go with the old reliable of mine, Survival. I know, shocking, Dalaran wants to play an undertuned spec, but listen, Survival is very enjoyable for me. Maybe it's something that has to do with being a melee. Being a rogue, for example, you have a lot of mobility. Survival also has a ton of mobility. Being able to pistol shot enemies from afar as Outlaw is kind of cool if you want to keep your range while generating comm points. And so you can do the same with Survival, throwing them nades and Serpent Sting from afar. There's just something about it that's kind of very similar to Outlaw Rogue, but it's also very different. And it comes with a pet, and I feel like some of the changes Survival has gotten recently, which isn't a lot, but the small changes that did get changed on Shadowlands I do like. There's certain different playstyles and talent combos that I prefer, and the fact that it doesn't have caps on certain AoE abilities could give it that secret advantage in very few situations. But still, it is a spec that I find myself gravitating towards when playing a Hunter. BM and MM are all awesome and definitely a spec I can fall back on if I need like real damage or real range, but if I want to play something that's super fun, Survival will be my go-to. And then we got the Warrior, and this decision is hard. Between Fury and Arms, I have to lean towards Arms by a little bit. It's really close, but Fury and Arms are both very enjoyable. I like the toolkits that Warriors have gotten baseline. I think it's going to make them much more of a fleshed out spec to play. You can do a lot more than just go in and do as much damage as you can. So I really enjoy that about both of the Warrior specs. Fury has gotten a couple of interesting talents, and I've always enjoyed its playstyle. I feel it's always smooth, and I think it's going to feel pretty smooth at the beginning of the expansion since you get so much free haste from your enrages. And Arms, I feel like, might be a bit of an underdog until you can get more haste, but I think that's going to be interesting about Arms Warrior is this underdog nature that I think I could totally get behind. But the spec is going to be more about burst AoE rather than sustained AoE. I do love the change to its mastery, and I think both of those specs would totally be something I could alt. For Druids, I have to choose between Feral or Boomy. Of course, Guardian and Resto, I have no problems against those. I actually like both of the playstyles if I had to be a Resto or a Guardian for like a pickup group or something. But if I had to choose a DPS that I have to select, I'd probably go with Boomy. It kind of switches back and forth between Feral and Boomkin, but I found those two specs to be quite interesting. I think some of the changes Blizzard has done to them are interesting and something I actually want to get into and get to know and understand. For example, Feral Druid, I really want to see if it's possible to make a bleed-based playstyle, and with so many different legendaries, you might actually be able to make a mad bleed build, potentially with certain stats on your gear, which I'm all behind for. And then there's Balanced Druid, which has gotten through quite a bit of changes too, and it's interesting where the Druids are because it isn't really a spec that I just find myself familiar with. The fact is, Druid have gotten quite a bit of changes where I feel like they're more foreign than before. I mean, how to even open up as a Feral Druid with the changes I've done to Berserk and Shred. So it's a spec that I want to learn, and because there's something new for me to explore, it's definitely something I want to commit my time into. Whether it is Boomy or Feral, I'm definitely going to be playing a Druid as an alt in Shadowlands. And then it's going to have to take it back to the Mage, and you know I had to be playing that Arcane. I know, I'm gonna be rolling my face on the keyboard, spamming Arcane Explosion in Mythic Plus dungeons, but you know what? I'm gonna enjoy doing it. There's something just specific about Arcane that I can't put my finger on it, but there's something about it that I love. Fire in Battle for Azeroth has been a very, very strong spec, and it was super cool figuring out how to play it, but then eventually the fire burnt out. Then you have the Frost, which has the bowling playstyle where you drop down the frozen orb down the dungeon against a bunch of mobs and start lancing them from afar. Very effective, but there's just something about Arcane that I really like. The burst potential, maybe it's the buttons, maybe it's the prune on GCDs, maybe it's all the different changes that I've gotten, the small and the big ones, or maybe it's just the control of your abilities. I always thought of Arcane Mage to be able to control mana as well as damage output almost anytime they wanted. Every time we look at Khadgar or Jaina using arcane spells, they were able to do insane things with just that one element of Arcane. And I feel like Arcane has a bit more control going into this expansion, and a control that I know I'm gonna enjoy blasting. Then we have Warlocks, and between Warlocks, there's 3 specs that are all beautiful in their own way. Honestly, I could probably, if I didn't play Rogue, main Warlock, because all specs are great. But if I had to highlight some, you know Affliction is going to be on top of it. I enjoy the hell out of Affliction. I love some of the different synergies and playstyles and Malefic Rapture and the way your dots do stuff and the legendaries and just about everything about the spec and the different combinations you can have with it. But I also will have Affliction take a spot and share it together with Demonology. I know, Demo didn't really get too many new changes, but I like what I like, and I really like some of the small changes that Demonology has gotten to maintain its zoo capacity of billions and billions of imps, while still being able to put out quite a bit of damage and have a variety of different playstyles that could have potential with legendaries. I feel like the mix for Warlock is going to be partially its new ground for me to tread, so it's going to be a lot for me to explore. Playstyles that I really like, and all of them I really like, but Affliction and Demo are going to be my highlight, as well as the enjoyment. I feel like I could play those 2 specs for a very long while, even to the point where I could literally main the class. So of course, Warlock would be on the list. Anyway guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. This has been the video for all the different specs that I'm interested in alting. I find alting specs in particular much easier than alting classes, and I know eventually I should be able to take care and take a look at every single class, every single playstyle, and that the time for that will probably come. But it's so much easier if you want to alt a character. Just pick a playstyle, pick a spec that you like. You want to be the most invited guy into the groups, pick the best meta spec you can, or if you want to play the playstyle that you find more fun, pick survival or whatever other spec that fancies you, and then try to make that spec the best you can. I found just going for a spec specific playstyle and gearing for that spec and doing all the stuff for that spec and the research for the spec is far easier than having to keep up with a whole another class. And hopefully Shadowlands will deliver very well on the ability for us to play alts, as I cannot wait to get into Shadowlands, level my main as well as level all these alts and check out some of the different playstyles once the tuning and final changes have been finalized. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another video.